Hello guys, welcome back again to another tutorial. My name is Dorothy. In today's video I'll be showing you the step-by-step process on how to draft an off-shoulder bustier pattern. If this is something you're interested in, let's get started with the video. I have my pattern paper and other drafting tool ready for this project. Here on my measuring tape or tape roll, whichever you call it, I'll be taking away 5 inches. These 5 inches I am taking away, it's supposed to be for the shoulder measurement if I should be drafting the usual basic body pattern or a princess dart bustier or even a shoulder dart. But because it's an off shoulder bustier, that's why I am taking away 5 inches. So the 5 inches I'm taking away is not totally going to be a waste, because I will still be considering from my shoulder to measure all my vertical points, which is from my shoulder to my bust point to my underbust to my waistline. So from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches, I mark that. Then from my shoulder to my underbust is 13.5 inches, I mark that. From my shoulder to my waistline is 16 inches, I mark that. Then I mark 1 inch allowance. So I mark this point across the pattern paper, then I'll use my ruler to connect this point horizontally. So this top of my pattern paper that I'm directing will be the chest line. Let me label all these lines out so no one gets confused. So here is the chest line, the bust point line, the under bust point line, the waistline, and the allowance. Now to take our dart, here on the bust point line, I'll be dividing my nipple to nipple measurement by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches. Divide by 2 is 3.5 inches. So I added 1 inch sewing allowance to it. So I mark 4 inches on the bust point line. On the under bust line, I marked the same 4 inches there. And I also did the same on the waistline and also on the allowance. Now I will use my ruler to connect all those points that are marked on the straight line. Here on the chest line, I added 1 inch to the 4 inches that I just marked on the bust point, on the bust and on the waistline. That is 5 inches. So I mark 5 inches on the chest line. Then I will use my ruler to connect this line from the bust point to the point on the chest line. Now to take our dart, here on the underbust line, on this side of the center front, this side is semi marking, I mark half an inch right there. Then on this side of the side front, I came out by 1.5 inches. Then I will mark the same thing on the waistline as well. So on this waistline, on this side front, I marked 1.5 inches. While this side on the center front, I came in by half an inch. Now I will use my ruler to connect these points that I just marked on the straight line. Right here on the bust point, I will come down by half an inch. This half an inch that I'm coming down is to avoid any gaping or sharp edge at the bust point. That is when we transfer our pattern to a fabric and we sew it, we don't want our bust looking somehow funny. Now I will use my ruler to connect this point or this line to this point that I just came down by like this. So on the center front, I will use a straight ruler to connect the point, while on this side front, I will use my curve ruler to connect the point like this. You can see that our bust curve is coming out. Now to tighten the chest or to tighten the over bust, we'll be taking a dart right there. So on this side of the center front, I came in by 1 inch. Then on this side of the side front, I came out by half an inch. On the bust point, I will go up by half an inch, just like I did the other time that I came down by half an inch. So altogether, I've taken 1 inch away from the bust point. That simply means we have successfully eliminated any form of gaping or sharp edge at the bust point. Now I will use my ruler to connect this dart point that I marked on the chest line to this half an inch that I came up by on the bust point. So here at this bust point, this mid part, I'll just go ahead to blend the line like this. Now let's go ahead and take our body measurements. So on the chest line, I will divide my bust circumference by 4. The bust circumference I am working with is 36. 36 divided by 4 is 9, so I mark the 9 inches there. Then the dart that I took on the chest line, I measured the dart and I had 1.5 inches, so I replaced the 1.5 inch dart on the chest line. After replacing the dart, you can go ahead and add your sewing allowance to it, but I won't be adding sewing allowance just yet. It's when I transfer this pattern to a fabric, that's when I'll be adding all the necessary sewing allowance. Now on the waistline, I will divide my waist circumference by 4 and I'll mark that. My waist circumference is 30. 30 divided by 4, I had 7.5, so I marked 7.5 on the waistline. Then the dart that I took, I measured the dart and I had 2 inches, so I replaced the 2-inch dart on the waistline. And that will be all for the marking of my body's measurement. There is no need to mark the underbust or the allowance because my waist measurement is the same as the underbust and the allowance. So, and same goes to the bust point and the chest line. Their measurements are the same. So now I will use my ruler to connect this point that I just marked. For the neckline measurements, you have to decide which neckline you want to work with, whether it's a round neckline, a sweetheart neckline, or straight across neckline. The neckline I'll be working with is a sweetheart neckline. So right here on the center front, at this point here, I came down by 1 inch for the neck depth. Then I will use my curving ruler to connect from this point I came down by 1 inch to this side of the dart. For the armhole curve, you can go ahead and use your curving ruler to make the armhole curve, just as you see me placing it. But I wasn't just comfortable with the curving ruler, so I first of all used my free hand, which you can also do as well. I first of all make a broken line like this. Then I went ahead to use my marker to connect the broken line together, and that's the armhole curve. We are done drafting the front pattern, and here is the part that I will be cutting out. This is what our front pattern look like. Right here is a center front, right here is a side front. Now for the armhole, you can decide to cut it out or you can leave it to when you transfer your pattern to a fabric before you cut it out. But let me just cut this out. Our front pattern is ready. We can now go ahead and work on the back pattern. I have another fresh pattern paper for the back pattern, but before I start marking the vertical points, that is the bust point, the waistline and the allowance, because the back doesn't have an underbust, I will first of all mark 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance. So from top to bottom, I went on to mark 1.5 inches, just as you see me doing. After I was done marking my points, I will use my ruler to connect all those points that I just marked on a straight line like this. Now for our vertical measurements, I'll do the same thing that I did for when I was marking the front pattern. So I take away 5 inches on the tape rule. So from my shoulder to the bust point is 10 inches, I mark that. Then my shoulder to the waistline is 16 inches, I mark that point. Then I mark 1 inch extra for joining allowance. Now I will use my ruler to connect this point horizontally like this. Now let's label our parts. Here is a zipper allowance, here is my bust point line, and here is the waistline, and here is the sewing allowance. Now to take our dart, I will divide my nipple to nipple measurements by 2 and I'll add 0.5 inch for allowance. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. Then I add 0.5 for the allowance, making it 4. So I mark 4 inches on the bust point, on the waistline and on the allowance. Now before I will connect this point, I will go up on my bust line by 2 inches because I don't want my dart to stop exactly at the bust point. Then I'll use my ruler to connect all those points I just mark on the straight line like this. For the dart leg, here on the waistline, I will come in by 0.5 inch, then I'll go out by 0.5 inch as well. Now I'll use my ruler to connect this point down to this point that I mark my dart leg. To mark our body's measurements, on my chest line I divided my bust circumference by 4 and I marked it. If you look closely, you can see that all my measurements are away from the zipper allowance, okay? Also on the waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 4 and I marked it. Then the dart on the waistline, I measured it. I had 1 inch, so I replaced that dart. That is the 1 inch dart on the waistline. Now I will use my ruler to connect all those points that are marked on a straight line. To eliminate any form of zipper bulge at the back, here on the waistline I came in by 1 inch. Then on the zipper allowance itself I came in by 1 inch. Now I will use my ruler to connect this line to the line of the zipper allowance, and I will also use my ruler to connect this one on the zipper allowance towards the zipper allowance. I don't know if you understand what I am saying. If you don't, just watch how I am connecting the lines. Okay, this is it. I hope you now understand what I was trying to say earlier. Now for the back armhole and the neckline, I will leave it like this because I don't know the neckline I want to work with. So it's when I transfer my pattern paper to my fabric, that is when I will be marking the armhole and the neckline. So let's go ahead and cut this out. We are done drafting the back piece, and this brings us to the end of this tutorial. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe, turn on the notification bell to get notified when I drop new video every week. And also don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Thank you guys. See you all in my next one.